Today I'd like to talk to you about evaluating positions. We didn't quite get time to do this at the training session the weekend, so I thought I'll have a crack at doing a video about it. So evaluation, you evaluate a position noticing all the positional things about it, I guess. It's you evaluate a position when there's nothing tactical going on, or the tactical things that are going on aren't critical. And you try to say to yourself, well, what's going on in this position? Who stands better, or what are the advantages and disadvantages of the two sides? To do that, you take a note of the positional elements. Somebody wants to describe this boring list of positional elements. Anyhow, this is the list of things that I think you should be aware of. And it's on the webpage, and it's on the webpage on that at the address shown on the screen there. And for each of those positional elements, I've made another webpage. So for each of them, there's a link on this page, and at that link you'll find some points and some games. Just before I show you an example, I'd just like to reflect on because everybody knows what a back rank mate is, and or at least they've heard of it. So for each of these, there may be different levels of appreciation, from kind of knowing that there is such a thing as a back rank mate to actually being able to carry out one, or knowing what sort of threat you've got against you. So I've said, level 1 of understanding is I've heard of it. That's not really any understanding at all. Secondly, it's you can recognise it. You know what it is, and you can recognise it in a position or a game. Thirdly, you not just recognise it, but you can pay attention to it when choosing a move, that it's relevant to your decision-making process. Fourthly might be that you know a model game. I mean, back rank mates notwithstanding, but some of these other ideas, like an isolated queen pawn. You've got a sense of, I know how to play this type of position from one side or the other. I know enough about it to win a game with it or against it when it's the main thing going on. And to say the same thing in a different way, you can make an effective plan based on this element. And lastly, which is where I'm going to try and get you to by the end of this video, you can judge for yourself how important it is in a more complex position. That's to say, you can weigh up how important that is compared with the other elements. So there they all are in a list on this webpage on the previous slide. And if that all looks unfamiliar, or a lot of it looks unfamiliar, I'm just going to say stop the video here and go and play through these various pages and these various games. So for example, under activity, I've made sort of 5 or 6 points about activity in the chess position. So first of all, piece activity, or having more piece activity, is enough to win a game. And there's a game between Rubinstein and Schlachter there that shows how that can happen. And there are some other games there and some other points made, and they're all well worth playing through. There's on these pages, there's 3 little dots in just above the board here, and if you click on that, this is a photograph of a page rather than an active web page, but if you click on that, you'll see the list of games if you want to look at one in particular. So if you wanted to pick out this Tarrasch Rubinstein game, you could do that. All right, so give you an opportunity to bail out here before we get into the weeds. We need to be able to weigh these different elements against each other. Ronstein once came up with what I thought was quite a nice idea, which was the theory of minor mistakes. He says, well, obviously one mistake, or one big enough mistake, can lose you a chess game, and indeed it can. But he then went on to describe, this is in his book 200 Open Games, which is charming, and then went on to say, well, perhaps how many smaller mistakes add up to enough of a disadvantage to lose a game? And he said 3. 3 minor mistakes, 3 errors are enough to lose you a game. I thought that was interesting. Also, in the same vein, if you ever watch Steinitz play some of his later games of chess, I don't know if it's a term from him, but it's a term I associate with him. It's about the accumulation of small advantages. That's to say, you take advantage of these minor mistakes, and you don't try and cash in straight away. You don't think, well, I've got this this one positional advantage, therefore I'm going to win the game, and I'm going to try and win it now. He sort of put those advantages in his pocket until he had enough to cash in. So, excuse me. One of the things I mean to do in this in the fullness of time is add to the games playlist in this on YouTube is an example of a game where Steinitz has shown how this is done. Another thing that crossed my mind while I was thinking about this was an old book, not very well regarded or very well known now, but I enjoyed it at the time, which was Point Count Chess, which is a sort of an introduction to positional play, very much based on a similar list of elements of the one that I've offered you, saying that each of these, an advantage of each of these elements is you might count as worth a third of a pawn, and if you've got 3 of them or 4 of them, you've got enough to win a game. Now, it can be that your advantage in any one of those elements is big enough to win the game. But I thought that was quite nice. You need to have an advantage of 3-0 or 4-1 or 5-2 or something, and then you might have enough of an advantage to win a game. I thought it was an interesting point of view. And of course, by phrasing in that way, that you might be 5-2 ahead, not in material, but in positional advantages. That there may be compensation, that these things can cancel each other out or count one against another. Anyhow, enough of that. Perhaps best look at some examples. Place for examples of positional evaluation tasks was always Igor Khmelnytsky's chess exam. He shows you 100 positions, and each of the 100 positions, the first task is evaluate the position and then choose a move. But first thing is evaluate the position. Well, let's have a go at these two. I don't know what you think of that first position or the second position, but again, I'm going to invite you to stop the video and have a think about those positions and what you might think about them. So, hopefully, you've had a chance to think about that now. And for the first position, the one on the left, I hope you concluded that this is better for white. White's king is more active. The bishop is, or should be, better than the knight, and white's rook is more active. There's equal material, and we've got a threat against our pawn on c3. The bishop is going to be better than the knight in an endgame, particularly when there's pawns on both sides of the board, as is the case here. In thinking about a move, though, and although I don't mean this to be a planning video, but if you think about a move from here, I think going passive, going defensive, particularly going defensive with a rook in an endgame, is usually a very bad idea. So rook c1 we'll do only if we have to, but I don't think we have to. I think there's a much sprightlier idea to try and take the game here, which is to play bishop to d3, targeting the pawn on h7, threatening a check on f5 if we need to nip out the way quickly. For example, if bishop to d3, knight takes f4 with a discovered attack against the bishop, that's not successful because of the check on f4, f5 rather, I think. So bishop to d3, and then try and go for it on the king side. So king to g4 to attack the pawns and shepherd the h-pawn through is White's best plan here. So that one seems to me largely about piece activity, the first of the elements, and it's one of the reasons I chose that as an example. The second position there Again, I hope you've had a chance to think about that for yourself. Not an awful lot going on. Level material again. White's pieces maybe a little better. The white rook being a bit more active than the black queen. Not an awful lot in that, to be honest. This pawn thrust to f5, which presumably was white's last move, it being black to move, looks very threatening, but the bishop can move. The other thing that's going on in this position is this backward pawn on d6, and if white has a chance to attack it, well, I don't know quite how to attack that pawn, to be honest. I can put two rooks and a queen on d file, and I still really wouldn't be threatening to win that pawn because of the bishop on e7. So that if that backward pawn is important, I don't think it's important because of the backward pawn. I think it's important because of that bad bishop. And in fact, the strong square for white, that is the d5 point. So in an ideal world, if I was white, I'd want to swap off the light squared bishops. I'd want to swap my dark squared bishop for the black knight on f6 by playing something like bishop to g5 takes on f6. And then I'd be left with this wonderful knight that would be able to go to d5 and never be swapped off. And black would have this crummy bishop that would only ever be looking at the backs of the heads of its own pawns. So that's thinking about it from white's point of view. From black's point of view, I guess there's not a lot positive to do right now. We've got a minority attack on the queen side, perhaps, by playing a6, b5, and trying to annoy the pawn on c2 at some point. But at the moment, before we get near that, we've got this attack on our bishop. And having said that the white wants to swap off the light squared bishops, then I think I'd probably pop that back on d7, keep the rooks connected. As it happens, I recognise this game, or at least I think I do. This is a game between Smyslov and Rudakovsky from, if my memory serves, Moscow 1945. A very well-known game because it appeared in Irving Chernev's the most instructive games of chess ever played. And I think here black chose to play bishop to c4 and allow white to swap the light squared bishops, which was the beginning of just help white with their plan. Okay, so Kamel Netzi's book, lots of these examples, and very well worth doing, and I hope those two examples are worth talking through. Now, that always used to be my go-to resource for coaching examples for positional evaluation. 100 spelled out rather nicely. But since then, there's been another book put out by Eugene Perelstein and who was his co-author? Nate Solon, I think, called Evaluate Like a Grandmaster. And he's not overpriced it. I mean, so many chess books these days are put out at 30 quid or something. This is much less expensive than that. I can't remember what I paid for it. and it's just nice. And as well as it being a nice book, Perelstein's offering a PDF of the some samples from different chapters. And I thought I hope this is okay by them. I'll just show you a couple of examples that they give away. You need to put in your email address to get the whole thing, the whole sample. But here is an example. So I'm going to offer you these two positions to have a think about, starting now. So I hope you've had a chance to think about those now. And the first position there, black to move, big black blot, top right of the board, but doesn't matter too much about the evaluation, whose go it is necessarily, but it is black to move. And just immediately and visually, I like black's position a lot. There's this nice looking pawn centre, which is going to cramp that poor knight in particular rather badly, and maybe the other pieces too. And I also like black's position that has got the bishop pair. And I don't see anything much wrong with black's position. So I think all the ticks are in on black's side. So if we want to say there's a third of a pawn's worth of advantage for having a pawn centre, and another third of a pawn's advantage for having the two bishops. We're well on the way to having a whole pawn's worth of advantage, and maybe more. But and if we wanted to think about a move, I guess the most obvious thing here is that there's the tension in the position is between the bishop on g5 and the bishop on f6, and white threatening to take the bishop. I mean, yes, it's on prise, and we can defend it easily enough with king to f7 or king to g7, or rook to e6, I guess. Although that would lose the e pawn, but we can defend it easily enough with the king. And to say so, it's not much of a threat. I think the real threat, though, is not so much to take the bishop for nothing, which we'll spot, but do we want to swap bishops? And if you've got the two bishops, if you're defending against two bishops, try and swap one of them off. And if you've got the two bishops, try and keep both of them, unless you can genuinely swap it for another advantage, like getting your king into the opponent's guts or other position or something else. And in this position, swapping off bishops is going to do nothing for black at all, so I think I'd drop that bishop back to g7. Second example, I think I like white again. We've got two pawn islands against three. We've got a great-looking bishop against knight, and both my rooks look better than both of black's rooks. So I think that's at least 3 pawns worth of at least 3/3 of a pawn advantage. So at least 3 elements are all in the white column again. And I don't see any difficulty in assessing this position for white. It is more difficult, I think, to come up with a move or a plan. I mean, obvious weakness on h7. I don't see us being able to threaten that often enough to make it worth anybody's giving anybody a headache. So, what is the right move here? And Perelstein declares, and I haven't checked it with the computer, but I'm sure he has, that the right move is g4, which opens up lines for the more active pieces, which is always good advice. And either we're going to swap off on f5, or the pawn is going to advance and may become weak. If we're going to swap the f pawn for the g pawn, so black makes the exchange, then the h file opens up, and then that h7 pawn looks a lot weaker than it did previously, particularly with the open diagonal from c2 to h7. So that's the one. Next two positions, please. And so there they are. And again, I'll give you a chance to have a little think about those for a few minutes. So, what did you think? The pawn, the position in the number 3 there, I think is quite rich, and I think it's a very good example. The position that we've got there, well, let's just go through it. Black to move, so I know what you think about it from black's point of view, but just to compare advantage and disadvantage. White's got a rook on the open e file, although nowhere particular to put it at the moment. We've dislodged the black king, so that it can't castle. We've got an active queen, and we've got 2 pawn islands instead of black's 4. On the debit side, from white's point of view, we got all these queenside pieces in bed. So the rook, knight and bishop haven't moved at all, and although we've got these 2 strong pieces in play, the other pieces have yet to make an appearance. I'm looking at black's position. We like the 2 bishops. We always like the 2 bishops, and but I really don't like the pawn structure. So there's 3 isolated pawns and a pair of double pawns, and you think, no, not the terrible pawn structure. The pawns, actually, I don't think black's pawns are that weak, because I can't see white attacking them just yet. And at least if white does attack them, I think they're relatively straightforward to defend. So I don't see how we can attack the h pawn quickly or easily. I don't see how we can attack the f pawn seriously. We can easily attack it with queen to h5, but I don't see how we can make that stick. So after queen h5, presumably bishop e6 or something like that, and I think we're doing okay as black. And similarly, the pawns on the queen side, that a7 pawn, I don't see that as being weak. But pawns are weak if you can attack them. If you can't attack them, they're not weak. And the double c pawns just the same. They actually seem to control. Black's got a nice stake in the centre, which is sheltering the bishops and providing a sort of nice launch pad for them, really. So, and Black's king. You think, well, king safety, surely that's one of the most important positional elements, and it is. But I think Black's king is okay. I don't see how White can get in with so little development, and actually with no open lines to get to it very easily. If you wanted to move here, I think there are probably lots of good moves here for Black. Perelstein suggests, and I rather applaud it, is the move from b8 to b4, offering an exchange of queens. Now that really takes the sting out of any hopes White might have of making a nuisance with this active queen. So if we manage to swap them off as Black, I think we're doing quite well. And Black can also, I think, then think about securing the king position by walking the king from d8 to c8 to b7, where I imagine it's going to be quite safe. A king in that position might not be safe if White can organise an attack and some open lines. I don't see that happening. So queen b4 is quite the way forward there for Black, and I think that one is well within reach. The difficult bit of assessing that position is that so much is there's so many different things to point out and so many different things to weigh. But I think you can tick off the positional advantages and disadvantages very quickly. Double pawns, isolated pawns, and so on like that for Black. Right, the difficult thing to realise there is that Black's pawn weaknesses and king, the dislodged king, are not important because White doesn't have the development or the activity or the open lines to make them stick. So actually, this is better for Black. The final position, now, the previous position was Perelstein against NN, and this one is Carlsen against Dubon. Now, I think I've heard of these two guys, and they're pretty good. And when you're a top grandmaster playing another top grandmaster, you tend to get positions that are rich, difficult, and the sort of rich, difficult position that you're hoping your opponent will make a mistake in. And so this one proves to be. So this looks a bit Sicilian to me. No, I'm quite wrong there. The c pawn's still on the board. This looks so it looks like it comes from an open game, or the games that begin e4, e5. And we've got a position where White's got not a more pawns in the centre, but a further advanced pawn in the centre, so a little bit more space. And Black's got this backward pawn on d6. However, Black doesn't seem to be suffering from a lack of space. They've got a good post for most of their pieces, it seems to me. The bishop on c8 obviously has moved back, but is actually quite well placed there, I think, on c8. So Black's not struggling for a want of space. And White's pieces are they look okay. We've got that bishop on g3 looking at the pawn on d6, which is nice. We might be able to make something out of that shortly. And the bishop on g2 though is a bit more of an issue. That's not a happy piece at the moment, and that can move only backwards, which is not good. I often pick up pieces like that and show them around to my young players at the club and say, look at this bishop, it's pulling a sad face, which often they are. So that's that. There we are. So in terms of a move, well, obviously White's just stuck g5 in Black's face, attacking the knight. And I would have thought 99 chess players out of 100 were going to pick up that knight and move it somewhere, or at least 99 players at my level. But in fact, so who stands better? I forgot to mention that. I mean, I think if you ponder this for a bit, I mean, I think it's I don't know, nothing looks very convincing to me. It's about level, and Perelstein suggests that Stockfish thinks it's about level 2. Now, I don't always trust Stockfish, even the very modern ones on very modern machines, when it comes to sort of positions where there's not too much going on tactically. The long-term positional planning and so on is easy for them. But I'm happy to accept that this position is roughly equal. However, the move chosen in the game was not to move the knight, but to play pawn from h5 to h4, making a pawn sacrifice, but also trying to make a bit of a nuisance of itself. And with what I do, I can't remember how, to be honest, but bishop takes h4, knight h5 looks sensible to me, trying to get hold of those kingside dark squares and threatening to take over the position with a move like bishop to e5 check, when I expect Black's got very good chances to be active and make a nuisance of themselves. Anyhow, so that's sort of top level of evaluation, and if you didn't quite get the hang of that one, then I guess we might be able to say that Carlsen didn't either, because I think Dubov went on to win. Anyhow, I hope you got something out of that, and see you on the next video.